You pushed it through the sandbox, the front wheels hit a rock, the dump bed tilted back and poured out a load of wet sand. You were 5 years old and the backyard was a construction site and you were in charge. The truck was yellow, it was heavy, it was made of steel, and it was the first thing you ever owned that felt like it belonged to the real world, not a toy world. That was a Tonka truck. They do not make them like that anymore. They make something with the same name, but it is not the same thing. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. The weight. You have to start with the weight, because the first thing you noticed about a Tonka truck was how heavy it was. You picked it up and it pulled your arm down. It was made of 20-gauge cold-rolled automotive steel, the same metal they use to make car body panels, riveted joints, welded seams, baked enamel paint, fired in an oven so the yellow would not chip even when you scraped it across the concrete driveway at full speed. Rubber tires on metal axles, a dump bed that tilted on a steel hinge. You could stand on it. You did stand on it. You rode it down the hill in the side yard like a go-kart with your feet dragging on the grass and your mother yelling from the porch, and the truck did not bend, and it did not buckle, and it did not care. Your mother backed the station wagon over it in the driveway, and it lost some paint and the bed bent slightly, but the wheels still turned and the bed still went up and down, and you played with it the next morning like nothing had happened. Because nothing had happened. It was a Tonka truck. It was built like the real thing, and the real thing does not break when a station wagon rolls over it. The sandbox. This is where it lived. The sandbox in the backyard that your father built from 4 landscape timbers and filled with 50-pound bags of sand from the hardware store. That sandbox was not a sandbox. It was a quarry. It was a highway project. It was a city being built from nothing. You had the yellow dump truck in the middle and the bulldozer on the left pushing sand into a pile and the front loader scooping it up and dropping it into the bed of the dump truck, and the dump truck driving across the sandbox to the other side and tilting the bed back and pouring the load out and going back for more. You did this for hours. You did not get bored. You did not need a screen. You did not need a battery. You did not need instructions. You had steel trucks and sand and your imagination and an afternoon that stretched until your mother called you in for dinner. And when you came inside, your fingernails were black and your knees were caked with sand, and there was dirt in your hair, and you left the trucks in the sandbox overnight because they would be fine. They were always fine. You could leave a Tonka truck in the rain for a week, and it would still be there on Monday morning, still working, still yellow, still ready. The fleet. You did not have one Tonka truck. Nobody had one Tonka truck. You had a fleet. The mighty dump was the centerpiece. The banana yellow dump truck with the massive tires and the tilting bed, which came out in 1965 and became the best-selling toy truck of the century. But around the mighty dump, you built an empire. The bulldozer with the blade that went up and down, the front loader with the scoop that curled under and lifted, the crane with the boom that swung and the cable that wound on a little spool, the grader that smoothed the roads you built between the sandbox and the flower bed, and the cement mixer. The cement mixer was the crown jewel. It had a barrel that turned when you cranked the handle on the back and a discharge chute that swiveled. You filled the barrel with mud and small rocks, turned the crank, and the mud poured out the chute like real concrete. You poured foundations for buildings that did not exist in a city that only you could see. Your parents did not like you tearing up the yard to make mud. You told your mother you needed a glass of water. She asked if you were going to use it to make mud. You said no. You were absolutely going to use it to make mud. The elephant. In 1974, Tonka made a commercial that every boy in America remembers. They put a real African elephant on top of a Tonka truck. The elephant stood on it with its full weight. The truck did not break. That was the commercial. That was the whole thing. An elephant standing on a toy truck and the truck winning. The tagline was Tonka, built to last. But every boy who saw that commercial already knew. You did not need an elephant to prove it. You had been running your Tonka trucks off the porch and into the driveway and down hills and into walls and through puddles and under car tires for years. You knew they were indestructible. The elephant just confirmed what the sandbox had already proven. The sound. Steel on sand makes a sound that plastic does not make. A low scraping rumble when you drag the dump truck through wet sand. A metallic clank when two trucks collide at the intersection you built between the swing set and the garden hose. The rattle of the dump bed hitting the frame when you tip a load. The click of the crane cable locking. The crunch of the bulldozer blade pushing through packed dirt. These were not electronic sounds. These were not beeps and music from a speaker in the cab. These were the sounds of metal working. Real sounds from real material doing real things. And under all of it, the sound of your own voice making engine noises because you were 5 years old and the trucks did not have motors, so you were the motor. You were the engine and the driver and the foreman and the city planner and the construction crew, and the trucks obeyed your hands and the whole backyard was yours. In 1946, three men, Baker, Crounce, and Tesh, started a company called Mound Metalcraft in an old schoolhouse in Mound, Minnesota, on the shores of Lake Minnetonka. They made garden tools, tie racks, and metal implements. The schoolhouse had been used during the war to make ammunition boxes. One of the three men found some toy designs that the previous tenant had abandoned because he was not interested in the toy business. They looked at the designs. They looked at each other. They started making toy trucks out of 20-gauge automotive steel. The first year they made steam shovels and cranes with 6 employees and sold 37,000 of them, and the entire inventory was gone in a few months. Baker said a youngster really had to use his imagination with the toys on the market, and we decided to make scale model miniatures that looked just like the trucks a little boy might see passing his house every day. They named the company Tonka after the Dakota Sioux word for great. By 1974, they had 2,000 employees and facilities in 8 countries, and they were producing 13 to 16 million trucks a year. $102 million in annual sales. From a schoolhouse in Mound, Minnesota, to the biggest toy truck company in the world in less than 30 years. The mighty dump. If you close your eyes and someone says Tonka, you see one truck. Yellow, huge, 19 inches long. 4 3/4-inch rubber tires. A steel cab with a windshield and a dump bed that tilted all the way back on a heavy hinge. The mighty dump came out in 1965 and it became the most popular toy truck ever made. Not the most popular Tonka, the most popular toy truck of the 20th century. Every boy wanted one. Every boy got one eventually, for Christmas or a birthday or as a hand-me-down from an older brother or cousin, and when you got it, you held it, and it was so heavy and so solid and so perfectly yellow that you understood for the first time what quality meant. You did not know the word yet, but you knew the feeling. This is a real thing. This is made right. This will last. Your brother's truck, your father's truck. That is how Tonka trucks move through families. Your older brother played with his until he was 9 or 10, and then it went to you. You played with it until you were 9 or 10, and then it went to your younger brother. When your younger brother was done with it, the truck went into the garage or the basement and it sat there for 20 years. Then your brother had a son, and the truck came back out and his son played with it in the same sandbox or a new sandbox, and the truck still worked because it was steel, and steel does not stop working. There are families who have Tonka trucks from the 1960s that have been through 3 generations of boys. 60 years, 3 childhoods, same truck, same yellow paint worn down to bare metal in the spots where small hands gripped it 10,000 times. That is what they meant when they said built to last. They did not mean it would last until the warranty expired. They meant it would last until your grandson was done with it. The real trucks. Part of why you loved your Tonka truck was because you could see the real one, the real dump truck on the construction site down the street, the real bulldozer pushing dirt on the lot where the new house was going up, the real cement mixer turning its barrel on the way to the job site. You stood at the chain link fence and watched the real machines work. And then you went home and did the same thing in your sandbox with your Tonka trucks, and the gap between real and toy was smaller than it had ever been with any toy you had ever owned. The Tonka dump truck looked like a dump truck. It worked like a dump truck. It was made of the same metal as a dump truck. It was the first toy that did not ask you to pretend it was something else. It already was the thing, scaled down and painted yellow but real. And that is why you did not play with it the way you played with other toys. You did not play with it. You worked with it. You hauled loads and graded roads and dug foundations and poured concrete. And the difference between playing and working disappeared in the sandbox on a Tuesday afternoon in 1971. The fire truck. You have to talk about the fire truck, because the Tonka fire truck was the one that made you the hero of the neighborhood. It was red enamel steel with a chrome bumper and a ladder on top that extended, swiveled, and locked at different heights. Some models had a hand pump and a rubber hose that actually shot water, real water. You filled the tank from the garden hose and pumped the handle, and a stream of water arced out of the tiny nozzle. You aimed it at the imaginary fire in the imaginary building, and you were a fireman, and the backyard was burning, and only you could save it. The fire truck was the one you did not leave in the sandbox. The fire truck came inside. The fire truck sat on the shelf in your bedroom next to the baseball glove and the model airplane. The fire truck was the one you were proudest of. Not because it was the biggest or the heaviest, because it was the most real. A 5-year-old boy pushing a steel fire truck across the kitchen floor with the ladder extended, making siren sounds with his mouth, is not pretending to be a fireman. He is a fireman, and the truck is real, and the emergency is real, and the feeling of saving somebody, even if the somebody is imaginary, is the first time a boy understands what it means to matter. Christmas morning. Every Tonka truck came into a boy's life on one of 2 days, his birthday or Christmas. And if it was Christmas, you remember the box. The Tonka box was not a regular toy box. It was heavy. When your mother handed it to you from under the tree, you felt the weight before you saw what was inside, and you knew, because nothing else in the world was that heavy in a box that size. You tore the paper off, and there it was in a clear window on the front of the box. Yellow, steel, waiting. You pulled it out, and the weight settled into your hands, and you turned it over and looked at the underside and ran your fingers along the rivets and spun the wheels and tilted the bed, and the whole room disappeared. Your sister was opening something next to you, and your father was picking up wrapping paper, and your mother was taking pictures, but you were already gone. You were already in the sandbox. You were already building. Christmas morning lasted all day, but you were in the backyard by 9:30 with the new truck in the dirt and the old trucks lined up beside it. And the fleet was bigger now, and the city you were building needed more trucks because the city was getting bigger. The city was always getting bigger. Then they changed it. In 1983, Tonka closed the factory in Mound, Minnesota, costing 2,000 jobs. They moved manufacturing to El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, Mexico, where labor was cheaper. In 1987, Tonka borrowed $555 million to buy a competitor and nearly collapsed under the debt. In 1991, Hasbro bought Tonka for $500 million and moved the headquarters to Rhode Island. In 1998, Hasbro stopped making Tonka trucks entirely and licensed the name to another company. Let that sit for a moment. The company that built the toughest toy truck in America stopped making them. They sold the right to put the word Tonka on somebody else's truck, and the trucks that somebody else made were not the same. The steel got thinner. Then it got replaced by plastic. The rivets became snaps. The welded seams became glued joints. The baked enamel became spray paint. The weight disappeared. You pick up a Tonka truck today at Target and it weighs nothing. It feels like nothing. It is nothing compared to the truck your father played with in 1968. The name survived, the truck did not. Your old Tonka is in the garage. You know where it is. It is on a shelf behind the paint cans or in a box with some Hot Wheels and a Lincoln log set or buried in a bin in the attic. You have not touched it in 30 years, but it is there. The yellow is faded and there are scratches on the cab, and the dump bed has a dent where you drove it off the porch in 1972, and one of the tires is cracked from age, but the bed still tilts and the wheels still turn. And if you put it in a sandbox right now, it would work exactly the same way it worked 50 years ago. Because 20-gauge automotive steel does not forget what it was made to do. It was made to last. It was made to survive your childhood and your brother's childhood and your son's childhood and your grandson's childhood. It was made by 3 men in a schoolhouse in Minnesota who believed that a toy should be built like the real thing. And it was, and it still is. And the truck they make with that name today is not. If you had a mighty dump in your sandbox, tell me what color the sand was. If you had the cement mixer, tell me if your mother ever found out about the mud. If you rode your Tonka down a hill like a go-kart, tell me how fast you were going. If the elephant commercial made you proud because you already knew, tell me what year you saw it. And if your old Tonka is in the garage right now and you are thinking about going out there to hold it one more time, go ahead. It is still heavy, it is still yellow, and it is still built better than anything they make today. I read every single comment.